Okay, we've moved on to multiplex keyways, and you've probably heard of multiplex keyways. It might be an old topic to you. Maybe it's not. Multiplex keyways are different than simplex keyways. The term simplex, you'll see if you dig around in catalogs long enough, you'll find the term at some point simplex. And that's a weird term. You might know the name simplex as it relates to vertical mechanical combination locks. The term simplex has a locksmith meaning, and that meaning is that the keyway, Yale para, or the E1R, is an example of a simplex keyway. That simplex keyway specifically doesn't participate in a multiplex environment. So a multiplex environment is where you have several keyways. The one that most easily comes to mind, I think, for some of us could be Schlager. C, E, C, E, F, E, F, G, F, G. They have 7 in the classic obverse. Well, all those different keyways, that's neat. You've got different keys in those 7. You got 7 different keyways, 7 different keyblanks. You probably know that the C won't go in the E, or it won't go in the CE, and the CE won't go in the E or the C, and the FG won't go in the E, and the EF won't go in the E, and the G won't go in the FG, etc. The key that's not the right keyway for the broaching and the plug won't go in. What makes it a multiplex environment is where you have, on top of that first level, multi-section keyblanks, and then an all-section keyblank at the top of the pyramid. So what they'll literally do is create keyblanks that will pass those different cylinders, and it's done in an organized fashion. In Primus, the H Primus, the HP keyway, will pass the C, the E, and the CE. Okay, I think the all section in Primus is L, just like it is in the classic obverse, an LP. And the way that they do that is literally the key is milled so that more of the key, the milling on the key, the material is removed so that it passes the different arrangements of wards in the broaching of the plug. Fun fact, the Schlager 35101 L, that's the 6-pin all-section keyblank, that's only available in stainless steel. That's the all section. So much of that key has been removed so that it will pass all 7 of those broachings, those different keyways in the cylinders. The key is, you can tell it's thinner when you hold it. So they only make it in a more durable stainless steel base material. Now, what's the purpose of a multiplex? Well, it sure is nice to have different keyways. You know, if you're doing a build, if you're a distributor and you've got a customer over here and you've got another customer over here, and they're 2 car dealerships and they compete against each other, you could literally install 2 different keyways. So there was no chance of there being any ghost keys or incidental keys working in either. It's an awful example. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's fun to have different keyways. You can use that to isolate what keys will work in what cylinders. But I think the reason the multiplex system exists in the first place is it was established at some point many, many decades ago, and it's done for a purpose. Now, you won't ever find a multiplex environment without you won't find a multiplex environment without multi-section or all-section keyblanks. That's the real important part, that you can have a keyblank that will work in different sets of your multi-section cylinders. The reason that it's done, in my guesstimation, is the following. We know to this point in this primer, in our 6-pin, 10-depth, 2-step system, we're going to get a maximum theoretical of 4,096 keys. If it's a 5-pin environment, you'll get a maximum of 1,024 keys. If it's a 7-pin environment, I think it's 15,625. Well, okay, that's cool. Great. So 6-pin, 4,096. Let's say that you get 3,000 actual keys after you have removed the max violations and you have removed the bad keys, 11212, 98989, 323232. You know, you get rid of all those keys. Well, let's just say you're left with 3,000. You could be left with less, and you could be left with more. It has everything to do with the selection of the TMK. What if you need 9,000 keys? And what if your mandate is to have a 100% expansion specification so that you need to have 18,000 keys over a 20-year period? There's no way you can do that in a single keyway. You can only get 4,096 theoretical. And we're saying we need 9,000 blanks. Think Big Ten University. We need 9,000 blanks, but we have to plan for 18,000 over 20 years. Great. It's impossible to do what needs to be done with one keyway. Here's where the leap of faith comes in. You're going to have your standard progression format, your 64 pages worth of key biddings, and we're going to deep dive into that as well, the standard progression format. You're going to have 3,000 biddings. Let's say that you take those 3,000, you cut them all on Schlager C. You cut all 3,000 keys, or however you do it, or however you do it, or different key machines, the punch machine, the semi-automatic, the Blitz, the Framen, the CodeMax. So you can come up with 3,000 keys. Okay. What you can do, and the reason that the multiplex system exists, is because you can do 18,000. Because all you're going to do is take your standard progression format, your 3,000 key blanks, your 3,000 biddings, forgive me, AA1 through AA3000, and you're then going to duplicate the same biddings on the E keyway, and then on the CE keyway. There's your 9,000. Then, for your master or your higher level keys, you'll cut them on the H key blank. And we're going to switch, when we switch to the screen view, we'll look at a couple of 3 or 4 directory structures in multiplex environments. That absolutely works. And that is absolutely why or how a multiplex environment can be stretched quite safely, as long as you observe a rule I'm about to give. Not I'm giving the rule, and hit that sort of huge number of actual biddings. Now, here's the trick. Here's the rule. You can never copy a key on any key section other than the keyway of that original blank. If you were to take let's just say you've got 3 dorm buildings. You got 3 dorm buildings. That's what's happening. Each dorm building, or let's say you got 6 dorm buildings. Each dorm building has 1,500 biddings. You've got 6 times 1,500, 9,000. And that you want to plan to be able to rekey everything once in all of those buildings. You're going to have an AA1 in all 6 of those buildings, right? If you were to cut AA1's bidding on the multi-section or all-section blank, that key is going to work in the AA1 door in all 6 of those buildings. That's why you can't ever duplicate a key on a higher level key blank in the multiplex structure. As long as you don't do that, you'll have no trouble. Unless, of course, you are cutting an all-section blank or a multi-selection blank because it's specifically intended to work in those doors. But that's how it would be done. The downside is those multi or all section blanks, they get awfully thin. I've had customers want me to copy keys that, my God, it's so worn, there's nothing left. And I tell them, I'm going to duplicate this, but you need to have your cylinders repinned. Everything needs to be brought back up to a healthy level of material. It's too worn out. The broaching is so large that the key slops around. He's like, yeah, I've got to lift it and jiggle it a little bit. And if you hold your tongue just right and jump around on one foot, the key will work. Everything wears out. And those multi-section, all-section blanks certainly are even worse off because they're thinner. There's less metal there. Before we switch to the screen view, let me see if I have any last words on this introduction part. So I paused the video. I don't have anything enlightening to add to this. So let's switch to the screen view and let's actually just look at the structure of some multiplex systems, and then we're going to basically reiterate what I've already started with. So let's do that now. Okay, here's our chapter on multiplex keyways. I imagine every major manufacturer has a system of multiplex keyways. But first, what is a multiplex keyway? Simply stated, imagine how your house key doesn't work your car, and your car key doesn't work your door lock. Why? Because the keyway is different. This means the broaching in your cylinder plug and the milling and the keys from one system to another are not the same. Multiplexing is done to isolate keyways in a system, but more commonly to simply accommodate the quantity of biddings requested when the total exceeds the physical limitations a single keyway can yield in terms of biddings. Let's dive deeper by looking at a multiplex key structure. This is literally out of the Hager keying manual. It strikes me that it might be nice for you to know where to find that. So in my site, if you just get to Hager and then click on More from Hager, that page is going to load in a second. This is their multiplex structure, H1, H2, and H3. And we sell H1 Keyblanks pretty routinely. In fact, of late, I'm not able to keep them on the shelf. Hager must be having good penetration with getting their key system out there. Hager's key system is interesting in that it's both tip-stopped and shoulder-stopped. So it's a small format. It's a hybrid. It's a small format and conventional core hybrid. So when you get to the Hager page, Hager keying service manual is right here. And when that loads, shoulder stop, tip stop, and they talk about, their system. It's a relatively new system. The Hager H series keyway, introduced in 2014 as part of a gradual phase and process to replace older keyways. I would imagine that means Schlager C. They're probably getting off of the Schlager C keyway and going to their in-house Hager keyway. Makes sense. Why not? I mean, why wouldn't they do it? Every other manufacturer does. Schlager has her own keyway. Yale does. Everyone does. Why not Hager? Anyway, if you wanted more information about their hybrid system, it's pretty cool. It's well thought out and pretty simple once you dive in and understand it, but you're going to need to kind of think in the rules of small format for the majority of it. So back to the matter at hand, that's what their system looks like. They have only 3 keyways. Now, they can accomplish lots of biddings because I think that they don't have a, I think this is called the depth and spacing data. I don't think that there are max violations in this. Let's see, their increment is, what is their increment? 0.0125 in terms of the depth. Okay. Well, what we note first of all is that it's a 7-pin system, and part of the reason they do that is because they use smaller diameter pins and they're spaced a little closer to each other. So it's always going to be a 7-pin environment. So you're always going to get lots of biddings in each keyway. I don't see the maximum adjacent cut specification here. I am tempted to say that there isn't one, but I've never, oh, here it is. It's max of 8. Yeah, sorry, it was right in front of me. Yeah, okay, so what they're saying is, like in small format, there isn't a max, although you shouldn't put a 0 and a 9 next to each other. It'll work, but it's bad. It's bad karma. So they're saying they will use a max of 9. They say don't exceed a max of 8. So when you've got a max of 8 and in 7 pins, you're going to have a lot of biddings. I mean, you know, so the way to, if you were going to observe a max of 9 for a larger, which is no max, you're going to have 9 to the 7th power. I mean, my goodness. No. 4,782,000 theoretical keys. When you look at their, what you might initially say, puny multiplex system, yeah, they have no need for more than that. That quantity of, that millions of keys that they could ultimately accomplish is easily accomplished here in each, you know, if you were to put those 3 keyways together. So anyway, back to the article. The above is Hager's multiplex system, and I use it because it is small and easier to start with in terms of the structure anyway. There are keyblanks and cylinders that are H1. There are keyblanks and cylinders that are H2. There are keyblanks and cylinders that are H3. H1 won't enter H2, and it will not enter H3. H2 won't go on H1 or H3. H3 won't go on H1 or H2. Okay, that we've discussed. You can see the 3 bottom circles. These are keyblanks and cylinders. H1 is red because that's the standard. You can choose any of these, but H1 is the one that you're going to get if you don't specify. But as I say here, it's not the primary reason why multiplex systems exist. So remember H12, you can use your imagination and see why they call it that. H23 and then H123. If you remember those, you can see the above the 3 bottom circles. You can see above the 3 bottom circles. You can see, okay, so what I'm saying is above, I didn't understand what I wrote there. You might think how nice of an idea it is to have 3 different keyways. You, or more accurately the owner, can select the common keyway or the least common keyway or whatever keyway that meets the owners and project requirements. I like the option of using different keyways on tiny jobs in this way. In fact, using an uncommon keyway as perhaps your house keyway, maybe your company should have a keyway, that your standard keyway. What I will read to you next is actually a true story. I used a Falcon 6-pin P keyway as my stock keyway, and I did enjoy clients coming back to me for cut keys, new locks, and bringing in the additional revenue. Some clients enjoyed knowing it was this unusual keyway that kept their employees from easily cutting unauthorized duplicate keys. People would run around trying to cut keys, and they couldn't. Not that it's restricted, but nobody had it. No one stocks a Falcon P keyway, not that I know of. I did. Others would report they, literally the words were said to me, drove all over and no one had the key blank. The practice of a lock shop owning a particular keyway is not unlike this. There are lock shops that buy into a restricted system and they own a keyway. They do it, so why shouldn't you? It's not like you're unwilling to provide service, or it's not like you are selling someone something that doesn't have a warranty or they can't get it copied elsewhere. Let's look at a simple example of how to apply this multiplex system in a real-world example. It's goofy. You may not do it, but I have, and I know of other people. I'm doing a job right now for a client who wants Primus, and he wants to put a C on one part of the compound and CE elsewhere, but then he wants H blanks. Let's look at a simple example of how to apply this multiplex structure in a real-world example. You have a single-family home with a detached garage. The owner needs to have a key that passes all cylinders. The housekeeper needs a key to the rear door only, and the landscaper needs access to the garage only. Here's what I do. As we have learned, there's 4,096 let's see. I would use the Hager H1 on the house, a Hager H2 on the garage, and cut my keys on the H12 blanks. My key blanks can go in either of those broachings, whereas the housekeeper's key is only in H1, and the landscaper key is only on H2. Probably what I would do would be use H2 and 3 to make those unusual key blanks. Let's make that So now if the landscaper loses a key, while it won't be impossible to get keys cut, it's probably going to be it's probably going to take some effort to find someone who will get it and then order it, especially when they want one key cut and it's going to be a box of 50 that someone will have to buy. The advantage of that is one key won't go in the other. You want the landscaper to not be able to enter the house. We'll make it so the key won't even enter. I just supplied a job where it's a manufacturing business in Pennsylvania. And this gentleman has a rapidly growing business, and they custom fabricate items on multiple CNC machines. There are exterior doors. The exterior doors have keyed locks, and the exterior doors have double cylinder deadbolts. There are then interior doors. The client literally wanted a key for the exterior portion of those exterior doors, a different key for the inside of the deadbolts. No, back up. The exterior doors had locks and deadbolts. He wanted one key for the locks, a different key for the deadbolts, and then a third key for the interior doors. Offices, HR, things of that nature. Apparently, if you had a key to the lock on the exterior, the bottom lock, you could come in because the manager already came through with his key to his deadbolt, and he was going to have he was going to be able to use enter because he'll have two keys, the bottom and the top. But if you're only permitted to come in once business starts, you only get one key. And then your interior doors you can't go to because you don't have the key. Well, what I decided to do, and I asked the client, well, that's pretty cantankerous to walk around with, the boss people having 3 keys, bottom lock exterior, top lock exterior, interior doors. I said, so let's multiplex this. 3 different keyways, then cut your keys on the multi-section blank. You've got convenience and security. He loved it. Worked perfectly. So the example of the house, that's a bit inane. I mean, who's going to go to that trouble? I mean, I do, but I play in the world of locksmithing. But the example of my CNC company in Pennsylvania, that's a great idea. And I get where he's coming from. It's a bit unusual, but I see it. You can have someone go to that exterior door and throw the deadbolt, and you can only get in now if you've got that key or the multi-section blank, which is a master. So as we have learned, there are 4,096 possible keys in our 2-step 10-depth system. After max loss, perhaps we can harvest just 3,000 keys. This is a rehash of my earlier. What happens if you need 5,000 different changes? You can't get that out of a 2-step 6-pin platform. Using the Hager system as an example, I can progress. Well, in Hager system, you can get it. In Hager system, you can easily get it. Okay, I just paused that and converted that all to Schlager. Using Schlager as an example, I can progress 48 of my 64 changes of my SPF. Again, we're going to talk about standard progression format later in the C keyway. This would total 3,072 biddings. We're going for 5,000. I would then cut half of my, so we can get 3,072, but I need 5,000. So I can cut half of my change keys, those level 1 keys in the system, or as best suited to split the system, on the C keyway. Cut half of them in C. Then you literally duplicate, yes, literally duplicate all of those same biddings on the E key blank. Obviously, I need to provide C cylinders where C change keys are to operate and E cylinders where E change keys are to operate. There will be no interchange, as, recall, a C blank will not enter an E blank and an E blank will not enter a C blank. You could also take half of the SPF, again, that's a new term, or 32 pages worth, and create that one in each of the 3 keyways available to you, which would be C, C, E, C, E. You can then cut all your upper level keys on the multi-section H or the L. Depending on how you carved out your system from the SPF. What that means is, let's say you didn't use C, CE, and E. You did C, F, and G. I have to look at that. Maybe, no, you did C, E, F, and F, G. I think you'd need the L section to pass all 3 of those. Schlager has 7 keyways in their classic obverse in a 6-pin environment that's nearly 28,000 biddings, meaning 4,096 times 7. Is that more than 4,096? Yeah, more. Editing while we're taking video. Yale has a system of 24 keyways in their GST family, and in a 7-pin environment that could yield 400,000 biddings. Medico can do 1 million biddings in a single keyway. Heaven knows how many if multiplex, if this is ever even needed. And if it exists, frankly, I'm not sure that it does. Medico is, unless you are really a locksmith who deals with Medico, you're not going to know a lot of this information because they're protecting the information because they're protecting their customers who invest in the system. It is important to mention a simplex keyway, such as the Yale Para. The simplex keyway stands alone and does not participate in a multiplex environment. Therefore, be mindful to not use this keyway or any simplex keyway if you expect to need to expand a key system beyond what its platform and KBA can produce. There are several books in my locksmith library that delve very deeply into the science of multiplex keyways. Suffice it to say, the only way to get a multi-section blank to operate 2 or more different broachings in different keyways is to simply remove material from the key blank. Ever wonder why a Schlager or all-section blank is available only in stainless steel? It's because so much material has been removed in the design of the all-section blank, so it is permitted to pass all 7 of the classic obverse keyways. And then to conclude, never use a multi or all-section key blank to cut change keys on. That's going to cause interchange unless there is a specific reason for doing so, and doing so will guarantee create incidental keys for which the original design did not permit. So what I'd like to do to wrap up this chapter is to look at some multiplex family structures that we have, and we'll look at Schlager, Yale, Sargent, Corbin, and Hager we've already done. So let's do that now. All right, this is the Cylinders and Keyblanks Quick Reference Guide from Schlager. Schlagel. Let me get some of them Schlaggy locks. I've heard that said many times. Schlager is how it's pronounced in German, and I have that on third-hand information. I forget. Was it Walter Schlag and then his son, and then he told Lloyd, and Lloyd pronounced it. In German, it's Schlager, but in Chicago, where I'm from, when it's pronounced what we would say correctly, it's just Schlag. But I've heard it pronounced every single way. Anyway, enough with the shenanigans. There's our Schlag system, our classic obverse, what I've rattled off, H, L. Okay. Their S family is larger. Okay. I wouldn't call the S345 a simplex keyway because a different blank will operate it. And the bottom line is, if we were to zoom in here, this key blank is thicker than this key blank. The key blank that fits in an EF is thicker than this one. So they literally just keep milling things down so that it's so thin that it will pass these keyways. The wards is what it is. This little guy, the shape, those are called wards. A key is something that bypasses the wards. A key can be anything. A key can be a paper clip. If your paper clip gets past the wards and operates the key, operates the lock, you've got a key. So these are the wards. And if you've ever heard the term paracentric, it simply means the wards jut into and over the vertical center line. This is not very paracentric. It is, though. I mean, if you looked at a Yale 19th century Yale pin tumblers, they did not have any broachings or millings. Well, it had a broaching, but it was just rectangular. There were no wards at all. Anything that you could insert in there would work. At least with a paracentric style keyway, you are reducing what tools can be used to stick in there. And if you look at Best and Medico, their X4, or Yale, I think, has it too, some highly paracentric keyways where it's just a zigzag, zigzag, bam, comes right off on a hard angle. And I was told by someone that it didn't really work for Best because people found it hard to stick the keys in the cylinders. Highly paracentric. Anyway, now you get the picture of what's happening here. Different keyways exist because you need more bittings than what one keyway can produce. Let's look at Yale. Same scenario. Variations on a theme. Schlager has 7 in their classic obverse. Yale has 8. You can do all this in a 7-pin keyway. You can get lots of keyways. Here's their E1R. That's para. That's their simplex, along with their other simplexes, simplex keyways. That's pretty paracentric. Same concept. The job that I did for that client, I did in Pennsylvania. I did, oh goodness, what did I do? Here's what I did. I recall now. I did TA, TB, and TC, and then his master was cut on the TMK. That's an odd code to use for a all section key blank TMK. They should have called that something different. My TMK is on the TMK. I mean, it makes sense. You'll cut your TMKs on the TMK blank. So that's Yale, and this is just what they publish. For security reasons, these Keyway profiles are not shown. There's I get pictures of key blanks all the time, and they don't exist anywhere. You know what would be another good catalog to show you? I'm going to show it to you when we get to the end. All right, Sargent, same concept. Here's their T family, their L family. It's all the same kind of stuff. A 9 keyway system. Multi-section blanks. Key blanks, multi-section blanks. Up here, all section blank. Corbin's kind of interesting because of the exceptional amount of time that Corbin keyways have been evolved since the 19th century. Here's a small multi-section blank. This is the Corbin keying or service manual. If you've never seen this, you're going to want to, well, if you ever deal with Corbin or Russwin or PF Corbin or Russell and Irwin or Corbin Russwin, you're not going to find it easy without this manual. So all these manuals from my website, and I'm not, I know it sounds like I'm promoting my website. I'm not. I'm just showing you where our resource is. Find manufacturers somewhere, and then go to, just say Corbin, let's say. On these individual manufacturers pages is where all of the resources will be, including any archival catalogs. For Corbin, I have stuff that goes back to the 19th century. I just scanned in the Schlager 1936 catalog, and that will be uploaded on the Schlager page at some point. By the time you're seeing this video, it'll be there. So as we scroll through the Corbin manual, which by the way is right here, Corbin cylinder manual, you can see their structure of their keyways. I mean, you may have heard of a 59 keyway. It's part of a system. L4, that's their standard keyway. If you don't specify, they're going to ship you L4. And it just keeps going on. You might say to yourself, well, this is mind-boggling. Well, in the first part of this book, they give you the history of all of it. A D1, an H4. I've got H4. I use it. H4 is my stock keyway when I do Corbin. That's the one that I'll order. My last name is Howard, and there's 4 people in my immediate family, so there you go. Other examples of this. Okay, so you get the picture. Every manufacturer is going to have it. Now, I had just mentioned Kaba because if you've not seen their key blank manual, you may not deal with key blanks very often. Getting into the purple section is where the door locks are. So they have, they're showing you the part numbers for key blanks. This is obviously Corbin Russwin, what we're doing here with that bow. Yeah, Corbin Russwin. Different structures. Here's a Dexter master structure showing you the multi and all section key blank structure where it exists. Not every key blank is in here, and it's because this could be Falcon. Yeah, it is Falcon right there. That bow is Falcon. I don't know. The problem with the Kaba system is this, they put an A prefix when it's 6-pin, but WP, if you call Falcon and say, what's your WP keyway? They'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. So those part numbers in the Kaba book don't correlate. I tried to order a 997A, and in the Kaba book there's a 997A. There it is. It's under Yale. You ask Yale for a 997A, they're not going to know what you're talking about. They'll know that you're referring to Kaba Ilko, but getting the Yale keyway is usually not a straightforward scenario. One other thing, since I've got the book open, there's a major, big, huge cross-reference section in the back. So if you're looking for 1054, I think that's going to come up as Weiser and Falcon. If someone comes into you and you're looking at it and it says 1054, you can just open this document up and Control F 1054 and find every match, and then maybe narrow it down from there. So every major lock manufacturer has these systems. Minor lock companies do as well because they need to be able to produce biddings, is the bottom line. Okay, let's wrap up this video on camera. Okay, so that hopefully sums up why multiplex environments work. It's so that you can get the muscle that you need in terms of the quantity of total biddings that your job requires. You need 5,000. You're not going to use a Schlager system in a single keyway. Multiple keyways, or you got to go to somebody who has a 7-pin system. Then you can do it for sure. Or someone else, whether it be 7-pin or it be Medico in a 6-pin environment, or whatever system it is. So the point being is the multiplex system exists because you need to be able to pull that out. You need to know how many biddings you're going to have initially, but it also dovetails into the how many keyblanks will my client need 10 years from now, and plan that all in. You lock him into something that he's going to bump into a brick wall on in the future. That's probably not going to get you new work. So be mindful of that. Use your knowledge and your skill and your expertise to position your future self to monetize. You never know. Someone could be a regular client of yours. I had just one more story, I suppose. I have a client back in the 90s and the 2000s. I supplied thousands of door openings of condo work in Chicago, mostly in the Loop, South Loop. But we did a job later that was in a western suburb. And these condo buildings were always 100 units. Super easy, right? Well, this other job that he came in is like, okay, I'm going to need 30 doors, welded frames. You know the routine. I need them yesterday. Turns out that there were thousands of doors on this job, and I didn't expect it. It didn't end up being a problem at all, but I realized, my goodness, I've got to make it practice regardless of who the customer is and regardless of how well I think I know him. How many doors are total on this project? And it's not you thinking in your head how much money it'll be as much as, in this context, how many biddings are you going to ask me to provide? Because, a keyway can only be stretched so far. Anyway, it's always good to ask these questions and then confirm it in writing so that if it comes up 10 years from now, yeah, I asked, this was your answer. Anyway, you know the routine. Let's move on to the next chapter, which is... Next chapter is Keying Conference. We'll talk a very little bit about attending, managing, coordinating, leading a keying conference. Let's do that. And as a bonus, to wrap up this chapter on multiplex keyways, I have some visual aids. So what I have here, 23030 in a C. The top one is a C, and the bottom is a CE keyway. And here's an H blank. So if you recall our tree on the Schlager Classic Obverse keyways, the H is not one-bitted, whereas Schlager's 23030s will always be one-bitted. They won't give them to you O-bitted because you could have trouble pulling that pin back. So the C works as it should. Now the CE Yeah, yeah. You can tell that's got a different milling profile. That CE works just fine. Now, so here's the test. Will the CE, this is the C, will the CE, which it's stamped right there. Here's the C keyway. That goes in this cylinder just fine. Here's the CE. That will not go in there. No, sir. Try to force it in, it'll get stuck. Well, here's the H. The H will go in. And I'll tell you, it doesn't feel like it occupies the entire width of the broaching and the plug. And again, that's because this is technically a thinner blank. It just is. So, okay, so we've got our CE key. Now, let's try our C in the CE. That's the CE. That will not go in there. It just doesn't enter. The H will go in. So that is a visual aid bonus on the multiplex system with a couple of 23030s. Again, really interesting, and I think the purpose has been made clear, being able to accommodate very large requirements of bidding lists, different keyways. I've sat in a class with Lloyd, who worked at Schlager for 15 years. I forget the actual number of years, something in that range. And he would say, "Can you do it? Can you do it?" And the answer is not in a single keyway. He'll say, the "can you do it" is, you need 10,000 keys. Not in a single keyway. Can you do it? So that's evidence. This is proof that you can do it, just not in a single keyway. Now we're going to move on. Thank you.